Hi there, this is Marty, and thanks for stopping by today. I'm going to do a sketching demo today. I don't normally do that, but I've gotten a ton of requests to, hey, can we see you do some live sketching? So that's just what I'm going to do. Also, later on, we're going to take a look at a fantastic artist in the featured artist segment. I think you'll really enjoy that. And then at the end, stick around because I've got some gift-giving ideas that might just help you get through the holiday madness. Well, here's the finished sketch, more or less, and I'm going to take you through a little bit of the process, but just start off by saying that every artist has their own way of practicing, whether it's sketching or painting or whatever they do. I practice all different kinds of mediums: watercolor, oil painting, drawing, charcoal, graphite, ink, all that stuff, because I love the variety that gives you. And I always start out my sketches pretty much the same way, with a very light sketching, loose sort of almost to the feel sort of layout or sketch of the overall subject matter I'm looking at. And a really good art teacher of mine named Jim Robinson, who teaches at the Art Academy here in St. Paul, Minnesota, helped me kind of hone and refine my skills a little bit in terms of process. So one of the things that Jim teaches you, and I won't go in depth because that's sort of his proprietary teaching method, but just to say that he helped me learn to make small corrections. So draw very lightly so that you can go back over your sketch and then make a ton of different corrections along the way. And you'll see me doing that. I use sort of a searching line here, a loose searching line, and then at the end I'll go back and sort of revise those lines to help me sort of indicate different features or pieces or parts of, like, so this is a fold in fabric. So what I'm trying to do here is really just get a sense of direction of the fold, shadow and light, and just trying to capture some of the very basics. So I'm using a very hard lead here, so it's going to leave a light mark on the paper. And this happens to be a toned paper that I got. It's part of a big sketchbook I got from Utrecht before they merged with Blick. But anyway, this is a TK 9400 Faber-Castell lead holder with a really hard lead in it. I think it's like an H2 or an H3 or 2H, I mean. So it's going to be pretty hard. And then here, what I'm doing with this Faber-Castell pit marker is I'm using a very light marker to just kind of work in some of the shading just preliminarily. So this will get darker over time. I'll add darker and darker grays and warm grays and cool grays, and then it'll just take on a new life. So here, and I won't walk you through every single tiny minute step, but here I'm just using a Prismacolor white pencil. I use tons of white pencils and markers, and even though I'm not a huge fan of Prismacolor after they were sold to Rubbermaid, their quality went to crap, but I use the white because for some reason, if you just go to the store and you pick out a nice white, you look on the end of the barrel and make sure that it's centered, that the lead is centered there. You can see the core. Make sure it's centered in the middle of the pencil. If you get one that's like that, it's going to be good. And the white is just kind of the best white pencil I can find. And that's amongst all the different pencil manufacturers. So I don't know what the trick is to get their white so white, but I tend to like to use a lot, and it goes down really smooth. Anyway, enough about that. Back to the drawing. I just kind of want to highlight some of the areas where I see light striking the figure or whatever. Now you can draw live like I tend to do. You can draw from a photograph, a reference photograph, if that's easier for you. One of the things that I've learned from life drawing class is that how to be very quick at getting the basics down, like the outline of the person, because in life drawing, like, people will change poses every 2 minutes or 3 minutes, so you don't have long to get that overall figure or sort of the gesture of the figure or whatever you're sketching. If you're working on a still life, that's fine, because then you can just sit it down and leave it where you want and come back to it later. But people tend to move around a lot, especially people in public. So it's really important to try to capture them quick, and life drawing helps you with those skills. And if you're not practiced at that, you can do that anywhere. Go out to a coffee shop, the mall, anywhere you can go and sit down and sketch people, and sort of capture them, their motion, but whatever they're doing. But to capture somebody's character, the essence of who they are, that's a whole nother step that you kind of have to level up to get to. And that leveling up just takes a ton of practice and going out and just doing it. But here's the upside to that. If you love sketching and drawing and art and the relaxation and peace it brings you and some of the challenges it presents and things like that, you're just going to love doing that. So I love practicing as much as I do doing the finished work. And I know that it might sound strange to some people, but I get something out of all the practicing I do, whether it's some small thing that I've learned or just hey, I got that right and I'm really encouraged by that. I've worked at it for a long time and now I finally nailed it. And after a while, you begin to notice these sort of happy results that happen. If you practice at something long enough, it becomes intuitive or second nature. So you start to see stuff better. Your lines are better. You tend to notice the shadow and the light differently, and so you start making these representational corrections, and they're almost subconscious after you practice long enough. They just kind of happen. And I'm not saying that every drawing you do or every painting you do is going to come out perfect, but certainly lends itself to getting better and better over time if you just let it happen. And you have to be somewhat disciplined about it as well. You have to look for those key elements and things. And here it's like, I don't try to get every single detail, but I try to let the viewer or the person looking at this sort of fill in the blanks for themselves. So in art, that's one of the cool things that you, like in painting or drawing or sketching, whatever it is you do, watercolor, you don't have to fill in every single tiny detail. I mean, that could be its own art in itself, but it's really not necessary. You can get a lot done just I think by practicing what those areas are that are going to lead the viewer in to see things and kind of fill in that extra area for them. Now, what does that mean? That means like it's kind of hard to explain, but it just the folds in this coat. Now every little tiny shadow and detail isn't there, but yet you get it. You understand that the cloth is bending here and there, and you can sort of fill that in. Your mind's eye will do that yourself. So like I said, every Saturday I get out. Well, I try to sketch as much as I can almost every day, but on every Saturday mornings, I get out and sketch with a couple of friends and a group, and we just go to coffee shops or wherever we can to sketch. There's a sketch event going on today at the Bell Museum, which is a cool place to go sketch, and so a bunch of people get together and sketch there and different places. It's just a really good way to practice and get better at your sketching skills. So as I get near the end of the sketch right here, what I'm doing is going in and adding just a few more highlights with the big Faber-Castell white marker, pit marker. Now that big huge marker is really cool because it's almost painter, it's very painterly like. So like if you put a little bit of white on your sketch and it really pops on toned paper, you can use your finger like I just did there to move it around a little bit. You got to catch it before it's dry because these are water-based markers and they're permanent. So once they dry, you can't really move around the color much. But before it dries, you can do quite a bit with the colors and the markers. And that's a technique I learned from a former featured artist on the channel, a guy named Don Colley, who travels around, works for Faber-Castell and just does incredibly beautiful sketches. He fills entire sketchbooks with stuff like this, and so I owe that to Don Colling, learning some of the techniques with the Faber-Castell pit marker. Just really, it's a nice way to use the marker. Now here I'm just, adding, again, just different little highlights. But back to my whole thing about just getting out and sketching. So, I mean, here's some important elements to just try to remember. One is use a very light pencil to do your initial work, and then try to go back over the work and make all the corrections you can to get it as right or as accurate as you need it to be, or as you can make it. And then slowly go in and lightly fill in the shadows, and increasingly get darker. Because if you go too dark, it's going to look like a weird overexposed photograph or something like that, like a negative space. So you really want to be careful about that and don't go too overboard. But if you put it in gradually, you'll know just about when it's time to stop. Now, some people would say, oh, you should have pushed this drawing a little farther, make those shadows and darks just a little bit darker. But I think on toned paper it works for me, and I kind of like it. So at the end here, we'll take a quick look at sort of the finished sketch. I really like the way his face came out. I mean, there's lots of highlights here that I could tone down, but I kind of like the way this works. And again, because it's practice, it does sort of work the way I want it to. Now, I went in at the end and cleaned up a tiny bit of this, and I'll show you the actual finished work here in a second. But this is pretty much it. There it is. Well, my intent wasn't really to create an instructional video per se, but since I mentioned these things, I do want to just outline a few of the steps. Use a hard lead like a 2 or a 4H, even a 6H. Create very light searching lines so that you can go back and make just a ton of small corrections. And then go from light to dark in the shadows, because you can always get darker, but it's hard to go back and be light. And then observe the lights on the object or figure so that you can add highlights. And remember not to be afraid. In the words of Nelson Mandela, I never fail, I either win or learn. So you're always going to learn something even if the drawing doesn't come out the way you want it to. And so that's really it for today. And I was a little hesitant to put up a live sketch or myself sketching, because I didn't think people would be that interested. But if you have thoughts about this, let me know and tell me what your experiences are. Maybe you've done some live sketching or figure drawing or painting, whatever it is. I'd love to hear from you, because I get so much out of the feedback that you leave on the channel, and just hearing from you makes the journey richer, I guess I would say, and just I learn so much from others as well. So I'd love to hear your experiences. Let me know. All right, well, I'm very excited this week to take a look at this week's featured artist, Steve Mitchell. Now, I met Steve Mitchell through YouTube, and he's got a great, awesome YouTube channel. We'll talk about that in a second. But if you haven't dug in, if you've just kind of been checking out Steve's videos and you haven't went and had a look at his art, gone and taken a look at what he does, and he's prolific through all different kinds of social media. You can find him on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, I think just a ton of different places, but his work is really extraordinary. I mean, Steve was a commercial artist for years and years. I think he still does commercial art, but he is just a brilliant master watercolorist all on his own, and above and aside from being just super entertaining on his YouTube channel, he's just this great artist. And if you dig in a little bit, look at some of his artwork, it's extraordinary in my opinion. So just see the looseness and the spatter around there, but the perfectly rendered sort of shadow and light, and what he doesn't fill in his drawings is as brilliant as what he does fill in. I mean, in terms of his paintings, just going back here and looking at his sketch and then what he rendered in watercolor from that is brilliant. And just taking a look at his art, you can see what years and years of practice and just talent and skill has brought to his work. I mean, this is just an extraordinary rendering of MacArthur, just not only because it's MacArthur, but just because of the looseness of it and the colors and the suggestion, some of the stuff I was talking about earlier with respect to sketches. So I just love Steve's work. I go there a lot of times just to look at his nature work, and I think I need to zoom in on this a little bit, but this is just a brilliant little vignette of nature here, just a tree, but you can see how the shadows are perfect, the rocks, the suggested landscape, the sky. This kind of thing doesn't come to a person overnight. You have to have a lot of talent, and be very skilled. Here's a picture of Steve, and if you know him from YouTube, you know he's extraordinarily entertaining, teaches really well, and I think the popularity of his YouTube channel has just exploded. I mean, he's just got tons and tons of subscribers, and people who go. Steve is their go-to person for watercolor tips and just art-related color theory, all kinds of stuff. And you can check out, he's got just a long list of videos he's done here. I think he's just cranking out the work right now. And on a more personal note, I've gotten to know Steve over the past few years. We connect on a phone call every now and then, and just talk about art or YouTube or whatever it is that happens to be on our minds. But it's great talking to Steve, because he's got just these really incredibly great insights into art and process and life in general, and just such a good sense of humor, and a warm person. But beyond that, let's take a look at, say, some of Steve's watercolors, which, by the way, apparently you can own some of these, so in print form or originals if you want. So search around on his website, look for that stuff. But when I look at Steve's watercolors, and I've studied artists in the past, John Singer Sargent, other American and European watercolorists from the early 20th and mid 20th century, someday people are going to look back on Steve's work and say, wow, this is really an extraordinarily gifted artist, and just you can learn so much from looking at his work. But here he is today with modern technology, actually talking about and teaching his process and how to do these things, from color theory to technique. And that's something you don't get when you study sort of artists from antiquity or the last century, because there wasn't this explosion of digital sharing the way there is now. So I mean, you can learn to be a better artist by getting to know Steve Mitchell and his work. And then he does a lot of blogging and talks about kind of, and it's mostly humorous, but a lot of it is good, insightful life lesson stuff and art process and art stuff. But yeah, I just recommend you get over. If you don't know Steve, get to know him. If you don't know his art, get to know that better. And yeah, I think you're in for a huge treat. So that's Steve from the Mind of Watercolor. Well, here we are. The holidays are upon us. Bam, they just hit us that quick, and now we're in the middle of them, and we're looking for holiday gift ideas. If you're a procrastinator like I am, you probably waited this long to figure out, hey, what am I going to give this person I care about, or family member or friend? And I'll have a whole list of this stuff on my blog, like a top 10 list of the best gifts you can give art related. But one of the things is people forget you should and can give art. And one of the tricks to giving art is, like, you're worried, okay, well, is this person, will they like what I buy? Are they into realism, abstract, whatever, watercolor, oil? Well, what you can do is you can contact an artist that you think that this person will appreciate, and just tell them, hey, I'd like the person to pick this work. Don't worry, I'll pay for it, get an agreed upon price, and then the person you're giving to can go and select the art. And that's a really nice way to go. The other thing you can do for holiday gift giving is give the art experience. So say there's somebody that who's an artist who really loves art and wants to practice it or get better at it, or just loves doing it. Give them a gift certificate to a local class, or maybe one of these painting getaways or things like that. That can get kind of spendy, but a small class like at continuing ed thing, those are really inexpensive ways. Or say I bought you time with an artist to help teach you, and lots of artists love to do that, and you can make a deal with them, and they'll say, okay, I'll give you 3 lessons for $25 each or whatever it is, and and that's a really nice experience gift. And there's an entire wide range, myriad of gifts you can give in the art supply world. But what's important about giving those gifts, especially to kids, is like a video game. Its novelty wears off once you're done playing it. You build the Lego set, you're done with it, it kind of sits. But with art, they get to create over and over again and enter a different universe every time pencil, paper, brush is used. So I think those are great gifts for kids. Anything art related, just make sure they're non-toxic, kid safe, and you can't go wrong. Now I'm going to list my top 10 favorite gifts to give and get Santa, if you're listening, over on my blog. And so I encourage you to go over there and take a look, and I'll show you how to get there in a second. But those are some quick ideas and more detail over on the blog. Well, if you haven't done so, go over and take a look at owingsart.com, and I'd like to ask that you subscribe to the page and join and follow the blog. So you can just go right here where these followers have, go down to the blue button and click follow, and then about once or twice a month maybe I'll post something, and you'll get a little note in your email saying, hey, Marty posted something new at the blog. If you want, go ahead and take a look at that. But like I said, I'll be posting my top 10 gift giving list here at the blog pretty soon, so be sure and check that out. And if you haven't done so, subscribe, comment, and share the video. You guys know I love to hear from you, and so if you drop me a little line, a little love, I will respond. That is a picture of my backyard today. So we got a little snow here in the upper Midwest, and it's kind of nice to see. We're hoping for a white Christmas. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for stopping by. This has been Marty for owingsart.com. So long, everyone.
Don't forget to check out owingsart.com.